welcome to another episode of Side Part Podcast. I'm Nikki, your host, and today I'm incredibly excited to have Lexi from Fantasy Fangirls podcast.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. She runs one of the best bookish deep dive podcasts, in my opinion, and she initially reached out and wanted to talk about motherhood and books, and those just happen to be two of my favorite things. So I said, come on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome, Lexi.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, like I know we're both mothers of kids right around the same age, actually, too. And we were even realizing that our kids are right around the same age gap, too. Mine are 16 months apart, and I think you said yours are 19 months apart.
Yep.
And yeah, right. And it's just like we're just like right in the thick of it all together. We talk about books together, and it just I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Welcome. And when we were trying to like schedule the podcast, I just thought it was so funny because we're like, oh, what about this date? And I'm like, actually, it's my son's birthday. And I was like, what about this date? You're like, actually, it's my other kid's birthday. And
it was like the most mom trying to schedule things ever possible.
Right. But also it was kind of like really nice because I've had people on the podcast who have been moms, but like not necessarily in the same stage of motherhood. And we're both trying to do this thing in a very, very difficult season. And honestly, I was really excited to have somebody who's doing really well at what they're doing while also kind of, in the arguably one of the hardest, most needed stages of motherhood, right? Where your kids need you 24/7. It's hard to find 2 minutes literally for yourself.
Right. Yes.
So can you kind of just like describe your journey to get to this point? Because I'm very interested and invested to know, how are you doing this?
I still don't know. Like, in fact, our 1 year anniversary is coming up. I know that we're recording this a little bit before it releases, but our 1 year anniversary is on September 10th. And I just can't believe that it's been a whole year of this. So I used to be in B2B marketing, B2B tech marketing. And then once when I had my son 3 years ago, I decided to only switch over to part-time because I really did want to also be a stay-at-home mom. And also daycare wait lists were really, really long. And you know how it goes. It was right at the height of COVID and all of that.
Yep.
Or I guess a little bit after COVID. Anyway, and then so I was doing part-time work for a while. And then once when my daughter was born, then I started my own like freelancing business. Again, like all marketing and really working within the same industry that I was. And then I don't know, like it always felt like something was missing. Like I was just kind of like, I was trying to latch on to my previous identity of being, like a corporate marketer, so to speak. And I was really enjoying these early, phases and stages of motherhood with all of the baby snuggles and, just like the 1 year old, just cuteness. And then my sister, last August was like, oh my gosh, you have to read this book, ACOTAR. And I was like, what the heck is ACOTAR? And I even like searched for it like on my Audible, and it's like, Nicole, there's no book called ACOTAR. She's like, it's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I was like, how the hell was I supposed to know that? Excuse me for cussing.
No, please cuss all you want. Like we are a free cussing zone over here.
And so then that's like really what started me reading ACOTAR. And when I say reading, like I was listening to the books. I don't really read actually very much. I'm starting to more often. And of course I do like for our deep dive reading, cause like I'm doing all my notes and annotations and stuff like that. But for the most part to actually read, I listen to audiobooks. And so anyway, so I like started reading ACOTAR series, and I probably finished that whole series in like a week, 2 weeks. And then right after that, right. And then right after that, my sister's like, okay, now here's Fourth Wing. And I started reading Fourth Wing. And it was so funny because we were both really wanting some kind of like deep dive podcast to listen to. And I'm not actually usually a huge podcast person. I certainly am now. However, there was one
like,
particular,
now that I'm, doing
right,
it.
now that it's my job. But like we really love like all the theories and character analysis, and especially like really going into the lore and explaining the worlds that are really so beautifully set up. And it was like we were looking for that and couldn't quite find what we were what we were wanting. And so I was like, well, why don't we just start our own podcast? And she's like, that's crazy. We're not doing that. And I convinced her to, because she actually already had a different podcast for her previous business. Anyway, long story short is we were going to start it with ACOTAR, and we actually recorded several episodes of ACOTAR. And then after I finished Fourth Wing, it was like, I think we actually need to switch over and start our deep dive with Fourth Wing, because it was very new. Nobody was really talking about it quite yet, except for, just like the theory videos on TikTok and whatnot. And that's how it started. And it was absolutely mind boggling how the day that the day before our launch, we were, doing like some video clips on TikTok, and just, it went viral one after another. And so our very first week, we were like maybe expecting, 20 downloads. Like, it's so hard to get a podcast up and going. And
yes.
we hit, yeah, right. Like you know that very well. Yes.
Oh,
and our very first week, we hit 5,000 downloads. And then, it just kept exponentially growing and growing. And so many people were resonating with this deep dive, format that we were doing. And it was so much fun, especially with all the theories, and Iron Flame wasn't out yet. And then, we did Fourth Wing, and then Iron Flame did come out. And then there was like that huge release and all the excitement around that. And now like we're at a year and we're at more than 5 million downloads. We are doing live shows. It is just like our lives have completely changed. It became both of our full-time businesses. About 5 months after we started it. We now have several other, team members. Like, it is like a full blown thing. And it's so much fun because I'm business partners with my sister, and we're absolute best friends. My husband has because I had been being a stay-at-home mom and doing my part-time freelancing, and I was doing the podcast, and like I just wasn't sleeping. Like, it was absolutely insane. And recently my husband actually quit his job, and now he is taking care of the kids. He's a stay-at-home dad, and my mom also is helping out a lot with the kids too. And it's just like this huge, life is completely changed for our family because of Fantasy Fangirls. And it's really exciting because like I get to literally just talk about books that we love, and it's so much fun. And being part of this community, it's just like makes my heart I can't even believe that this is real life. Like, I cannot believe that this is life still.
And you mentioned something like early on that you were like kind of in this stage of like loving motherhood, like the baby snuggles, and still kind of trying to figure out, like, find your way back to who you were.
Yes.
And I think I had this big moment. So I had my 2 kids pretty close together, right? I was like 9-10 months postpartum, was pregnant with my second one then. And then after my second one, it was like 4 or 5 months after, I had this moment. I'm like, I don't recognize who I was. I don't even know if I want to go back to that person, but that's what feels familiar, right? Going back to my career as a therapist. But I just feel like this hollowness of like, I know I'm more than just what I'm doing right now. Cause right now I feel like I'm in survival mode, right? I just need to get through to the next day. But I had nothing that like I did outside of just being a mom.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. And it's like, oh, like my way of filling my cup was going on walks. Like, I went on so many walks with the kids because
walks,
like that's
or the
what
grocery
we would do.
store, like that.
Exactly. And going to the park, and like, as wonderful as all of this was, it was fulfilling, but not in I'll call it the right cup. It wasn't my cup necessarily. It was my motherhood cup. And I didn't even know where my personal cup was anymore. Like, cause it used to be about work, or it used to be my husband and I going on adventures together. And with 2 very young children, that's very difficult to do. And so,
I don't want it to sound like I wasn't grateful for motherhood. And
of course
I don't think I appreciated motherhood less when I found things I loved to do too. I think you just kind of, the way when you have another kid, you kind of your heart grows to love them too. I think you just have to figure out how to create space in motherhood for you. And it's going to look different than it did before, right? Me and my husband used to do like these crazy long bike rides. We were really into biking. Like, I was, the spandex, like I was that.
I can totally see that. And I say that in the best way possible. Like, that's awesome.
I was really like, I was like fit girl. Like, I would, do the half marathons. I loved that for me. But with that, you need time. And especially when you're a breastfeeding mom, I'm on like a ticking time bomb 90% of the time. at any moment I could go off. So it was just like really hard because I am also a person, I don't really like being away from my kids for longer.
Yes.
And now that they're older, I'm like, okay with it. I'll be honest. It's like, I could take a break. But when they're babies, I'm like that person that just, I want to be there for them. I actually left a career as a therapist to be home with my kids. Financially, I don't know if it was like the best decision, but I will never regret it. My husband's like, daycare is insane. Like, let's make this work. And
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to be there with my kids. And in fact, I told my work that, and I was like, but I don't want to lose it. Especially I didn't want to lose that little bit of financial stuff. And I was very fortunate where with the job that I had, I was able to work just part-time remotely, like my own hours and all of that. And that was perfect until then there were two of them. And then it's like, okay, I can't work for a company part-time. I had to start working for myself so I could really make sure that I was, it gets a little crazier with two kids.
100%. I had this literally the same journey, but different. So I was a school counselor in a school. I went on my maternity leave, and then I just realized I couldn't go back full time into the school. So I actually worked part-time as like a clinical therapist and like just a couple days a week just to do something for extra money. Then I had my second. I'm like, hold on, I can't do it. I gotta all hands on deck right now. This is
exactly.
chaos.
It really is.
But then I hit 4 or 5 months postpartum after my second one. They start sleeping a little better, and I'm just, I'll be honest. Postpartum anxiety, people don't talk a lot about postpartum mood disorders as much. They do, but you don't think it's going to be you.
Yeah.
I thought I love my kids enough. I shouldn't have a mood disorder. I don't reject my kids. All I do is serve them. I love them so much. It consumes me. I'd hold them all day if I could.
My heart is bursting with the love. Yes, exactly. Yes.
But the thing is that I didn't realize is a lot of the really disordered thinking that I had, especially when it came to illnesses, around COVID. It just was so unhealthy. And then I realized it's this obsessiveness over motherhood and not having anything for you is just not it. And actually my sister told me to read ACOTAR. It was January, not a year and a half ago. And she's like, you just need to, I think it'd be good. She tried to get me to read Thrown in Glass. I wasn't mentally ready for that. I'm like, it's not capturing my attention. She's like, then start with ACOTAR. I think you'll like ACOTAR. And I was obsessed. I read the whole series in a week.
Yes.
And then
now, did you read or did you audiobook too? Are you an audio?
Well, my husband, so that was the thing. I actually read it on my phone on the Kindle app.
That's what I do. People are like, oh, which Kindle do you have? It's I use the Kindle app on my phone. Now I do have.
Now I have a Kindle. My husband actually got it for me for Valentine's Day because he's like, every time you get one of these things, you don't use it. And we spend all this money on something we're not going to use. So actually, after I read the 6th book on my phone, he's like, buy a Kindle. What are you doing? But my kids loved seeing mom read. First of all, that was the cutest thing. And now they read more because I'm always reading. But I will say, as things have gotten more chaotic, audiobooks have really come into play for me.
Yeah.
And also knowing that sometimes in your life you can read more and sometimes you just can't. And I think that was the hardest part about being on Bookstagram is I showed up, I'm like, I'm ready. It's good. And I'm like, I read a lot. And then I get on Bookstagram and I'm like, oh my God, you read 20 books a month.
Exactly. It's crazy. Well, and so for instance, when we started Fantasy Fangirls, we had only read the ACOTAR series and Fourth Wing. We had not read any other books.
I love
besides,
that.
Harry Potter. And because I used to be a huge fantasy kid, I am and was a Harry Potter kid through and through.
Were you a Percy Jackson girlie? Because
I wasn't. But I'm really excited to start. In fact, I just downloaded, what is it? The Lightning Thief? The Lightning Thief. I just started it because I heard it's a great
in college,
Audible.
Actually. I was not a fan. I'm 33 years old. I read them in college. I was real.
Too. Yeah. Same age. Yeah. So I and in fact, but I'll call it I guess the right way of saying it is I was a closet nerd. Like I didn't like let people know that I was super obsessed with these books because I wanted to be, you know, popular and whatnot. And that wasn't the cool thing to do. And it's really funny now that like I'm very open, obviously, about what I do for a living, and people from my past are like, wait, like when did you get into fantasy? It's like, I've always been into fantasy. I'm just like letting myself shine now. Right.
Well, like in high school, I read Twilight. I read the Divergent series. Like I liked a lot of dystopian stuff.
Hunger Games is just one of the best, like still one of my favorites. Yes.
Also,
I'm looking at your, like I have those same candles too that you have on your shelf.
Like I'll give her some free like publicity. Why not? Heritage Candles. Like she's like the sweetest lady, but like this Resand candle, it smells amazing. Like
I have my Cassian one right here.
She sent me Cassian too. Yes. She's like, and I put it on my story, and I actually was burning them in my story. She's like, I actually love that you burn the candles. No one burns the candles. And
I admit I have not burned the candles yet.
Well, and this is like totally getting off topic, but I actually don't take paid collabs right now because I just don't have the energy for it. But if people are like cool with me putting on my story or just like featuring in a reel, like in a low pressure way, like I will never hesitate to like prop up a bookish shop. Like I just won't.
Oh yeah, that's what we do with like we are very fortunate for small bookish shops to want to send us stuff, and we do that in literally just like a story with the link. We have our newsletter where we always feature a bookish shop too, and it's like there's all of that, and then of course like we have like, you know, an ad network that we do like sponsorships with the bigger brands and things like that too. But
well,
that
I'm sure
like,
I'll get there
it's not
one
the same,
day.
you know, of course not. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's like the other thing is you have to start somewhere. And I think sometimes people will look at, like, for example, if I looked at where you are today, a year into doing this and putting hours and hours and hours of effort with now you have a team. Like if I compared myself to you guys and then was like, oh my God, I'm a failure. It's like, no, I'm in a different place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
And we all have such different journeys, and Nicole and I are very aware that we have a very unique journey. And it like, we kind of joke about how we sacrifice the right goat to the TikTok gods, because if we didn't have those initial viral videos, like it is so hard to get found. And so what I love that you've done is you already had a great following, you know, like with your bookish content, and then you started a podcast, and then it's like, oh yay, Nikki started a podcast.
Yeah. You know, it's everyone's been really supportive of it. I think like it's been a lot harder to get off the ground than I thought it was. So very naively, I was like, I'm just going to start a podcast. My husband, you know, very politely but firmly is like, you don't just start a podcast. Like you don't just do that. How are you doing it? So then I did some like, you know, back end work about like which platform to use. Cause he's very techie, and he's like, I love this for you. I can't do that much. Like he actually will do a lot of like my sound editing afterward.
Oh, nice.
But he's like, I can't be like, I have to watch the kids. Like I can't be like being your producer too. He also works a full-time job, like 50 hours a week it's like the reason we can feed ourselves. So it's like,
right, exactly.
Yeah. And he wants to have a life too. So it was just like, I had to figure out how to do this by myself. Literally, like everything I do is just me with some support from my husband. Like and so I have to cut myself some slack sometimes. Like if I can't show up the way I want to, it's just the way that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Know? Well, and a big thing for Nicole and I is Nicole does, you know, she is my little sister. She does not have children yet. And she and her husband both work a lot. And so when he's working, like she's going to work too. And so especially in our first few months, we like when it was getting the momentum, like it was just all hands on deck. Like I really was up until probably 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning every single night, because our outlines, they take each of us about 15 hours a week. And because like it's like so much parsing through. Yeah. And our recordings are about 5 hours a week too. And then that's not even including all the editing and all the like our social media as like and then now we have our Patreon and a community and a merch shop and affiliates. And it's like, it is crazy. And you don't really realize it from the outside. And then for instance, when we're asked like, oh, like, can you please possibly do like 2 episodes a week? It's like, we would love to, but we don't have time. So maybe someday when we get more of a team or something like that. But yeah.
Well, and I think like that was like a hard thing too, is like I had to take 2 weeks off of posting episodes just because like some stuff on the back end of my own life happened and I just couldn't. I physically couldn't get the episodes out. And I think people crave more if they like something, which is beautiful. And I love it. And I love how supportive people are. But the reality is too, I'm like trying to keep myself alive, my family alive, you know, and fed and like make sure they have clean clothes and all the good stuff. And sometimes like this is what gives and it stinks. And I think it's really cool that people want more of you guys because I would love more. I love listening to your podcast. It's like so lovely.
It's so much fun, and yeah. So I'm curious for you because I know while yes, I do have more like a full-time job, like where it is more of kind of like I'll say clocking in the morning because I do have more support with the kids now. But for a long time, it was during nap time and after they went to sleep, and it was like I don't know about you, but man, I am efficient when my kids are asleep, especially during nap time. Cause it's like, okay, I have 1 to 2 hours to get like 5 hours of work done and go.
I know I feel like every stage, like, so there was a point where I could do that. And lately I've just been falling asleep. My kids fall asleep. So I've been needing to, but I've also noticed like, yeah, my social media has suffered for it. My podcast isn't as efficiently, but like, it's okay. And I think that's the other thing is I would kill myself when my kids went to sleep, right? Like literally up till 2 a.m., just doing all the things. And I think people appreciate it. Like, I think, right, when you put out this amazing content, but I don't think people realize how much energy you put in.
Yes.
Like when everyone else is sleeping, like, let's be real.
And it's so funny. So for instance, like I still do, even with all of the support that we do have, because our outline work is it's essentially like the way that I equate it is writing an essay, like an English essay once a week. And each of our outlines are between 15,000 and 20,000 words. So they're pretty intense.
That's like longer than some of my, that's a lot longer than some of my us in like my master's program.
It's like, in fact, my goodness, when we like finished our Iron Flame coverage, we realized that our coverage of the book was longer than like really a lot longer than the book itself. And it's like, oh my goodness. Anyway, it is definitely a deep, like we go deep diving, but like, for instance, my husband, like, you know, he supports so much with the kids during the day. And now I'd say, you know, instead of 6 days a week working in the evenings and staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning, now it's more like 3 to 4 days a week. And I stay up until like 10 or 11. And for me, like, that's a huge difference. But for like my husband, I feel so bad because he's like, I'm working so that you don't, like, you know, I hope that you don't have to do this late at night. And it's like, are you kidding me? It's a huge help because instead of staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm only up until 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And it's less days a week, but even like he doesn't quite see that because it's during it's like bedtime, you know, like he's sleeping. But for me, it makes a big impact. Yeah. If that makes any sense at all.
And I think that's like the other piece is, not so much with my podcast, but people like on Bookstagram will be like, how do you find time? Well, like literally right now, my husband has my kids over at his parents' house playing outside so they don't bother me. And I can do these things and have these rich conversations without distraction. And this wouldn't happen if I didn't have support. Right. Yep. And even if I actually had Nisha. Have you read Child of the Sun Queen by chance? I
haven't.
Okay. Well, Nisha Tooley wrote it. She's a best-selling author, but I had her on the podcast actually.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes. But the best part was that I was feeling so much guilt because I initially foolishly announced I'm writing a book, and life took over and I did outline the whole, not even outline. I wrote a whole rough draft and I just realized the timing's not right. I can't put the effort that I want to put into it. And this is like a PSA. Don't announce you're going to do something until you're ready to send it out because
yep. I have actually done the same thing. Cause I have a book idea and we've been frequently asked, are we writing our own books and whatnot? Yes. And I shared yes. And I just don't have time, with the podcast, with motherhood, I just don't have time to do more than just a little bit of outlining here and there. And I'm often asked how's the book coming? And it's It's not coming right now. I'm
I
sorry.
know.
Like,
And,
I
you
feel
know, she
so
said
bad.
something. So she actually found success later on in her life, like after she had her kids and her career and all those things. And she kind of had this point when her kids were like 5 and up, where she was finally had the opportunity to write, actually
Yeah.
pursue it without like distraction free, essentially. Right. They had a brief window of time where he's like, her husband's like, go for it. And I was like, you know, I want to do this. And she goes, sometimes it's just not the right time.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that you'll never do it. It doesn't mean that you can't do it later. She's like, I could not even do what you're doing right now with my kids that age. I wouldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it. Right. And it was just really powerful to hear, because I think sometimes if we feel like if we can't do it all right now, it's like you're going to not catch the lightning in a bottle, or it's like, no, it's just sometimes life is all about timing, and it's just not your time, and that's okay.
Yep. And part of it too is like wanting to enjoy the season that we're in. Like, for instance, like my daughter's first year of life,
right? That's
right. And it's like, and so like going back to like the baby snuggles and just like absolutely loving that phase. Like I know that everybody is different and there is no right answer. For me, the baby phase is probably my favorite. Like, I love my kids. They're toddlers now and they are fun, but the baby phase is so extra special, at least for me. And so like I did not even want distractions at that time. Right.
I'll be like emotional. I don't even want to leave my house the first 30 days because I just want to hold my baby. I get really protective. I'm not a person that wants to be separated. I feel like this like crazy instinct to just want to be with my baby.
Yeah.
It becomes my whole personality. I will say, as they get older, I feel like they're their own people. I'm there to guide them, but I feel like I'm their mom. But there's something, this is not for everybody, first of all. Like, I want to make this very clear. This is my experience. I feel like they're part of me still, right? You have this baby growing inside you, and it feels very natural for me. Maybe borderline obsessive, like I'll be straight up. Like,
me too. And like, again, like everybody is different. Like, I have some friends who were so excited to go back to work once when, you know, their maternity leave was over. And it's like, that is wonderful. I'm so happy for you. And for me, even though I did like kind of work, you know, part-time freelancing, because it was like really just trying to bring in a little bit of extra money. But it wasn't until when we were starting the podcast, it was like, I was ready when my daughter was a year old, ready to do my own thing. Yes. Because it was like, okay, like I've gotten, I don't want to say like I've gotten my fill of baby snuggles, because there is never such thing as getting your fill, but it is like a sense of like, okay, like I can feel myself missing something because I'm not laser focused on this anymore, I suppose is the right way of putting it for me.
Well, and I feel like some of that's just like the natural progression of motherhood, right? Like there's like this drive, like in the beginning, they need you 24/7 physically. Like they can't survive without somebody taking care of them 24/7. But as they gain more independence, I feel like it creates more space for you to be a person, a functioning human. And how do I explain this? I feel like I've always had this drive to want to create, to work in a sense. So if I could be a lifelong student, I would have stayed in college forever. Like, I just love writing and creating, and I love using my brain. I think that's why I love the podcast so much, because it allows me to use some of the skills that I've loved honing all these years. I don't miss having a boss. I don't miss like the stress of work drama or those pieces. I actually don't know if I liked work that much, but I do think I loved feeling like I was always working on a craft, if that makes sense. And so
like when working on myself, like honing my skills.
Yes,
I love
like
being
brushing
a
up on my
skilled
skills.
expert. Yeah. Like
absolutely.
I love being
and so
good
when
at something.
Peeled it back a little bit, was I really missing work? Or was I missing having the identity I associated with what it meant to have a job, right?
Yes.
Or have a career.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And so that was a big moment for me, because I was like, whoa. If it's all about like just needing something to like use those skills or flex that muscle in my brain, that specific part, why can't I do that if we don't need the money piece, right? Like money's not a factor, because I do know some families need that income. But if that's not a stress for us, how can I like find a way that I'm like satisfying that part of me that needs that? And so that's where the Bookstagram thing came in, was just like, it's if you scroll all the way down on my Bookstagram, I wrote like really cringy, like I thought they were thoughtful reviews. I don't know anymore, but they're like really bad Canva art. And so people are like, oh, how do I do this? It's like, just start, my dude. Like, just do it.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like, that's so funny you say that about like your old Bookstagram. I cannot listen to our old Fourth Wing episodes. Like from like when we first started last year, my audio is terrible. Like I also have never been much of a public speaker. I've always been like back in my corporate life, I was the person who made the board slides, but I did not present them kind of thing. And now that's completely changed. I am literally on stages for a living sometimes. And I sure do love the editing component. I'll say that with the podcast part, but it is like I used to be like really kind of like not knowing what to do yet. And it's so funny. Like I can't listen to those old episodes because there has been such a progression, and you'll never know until you just start. Like you just have to start and let it exist out in the world still.
Well, and I do think there is something really healing, at least for me, about putting myself out in the world and not have people like rejecting me, but rather like, oh, I vibe with what you're like selling.
Yes.
Like, I like this. And truthfully, and this house sounds like such cliche advice, like just start, be yourself. But honestly, like, people love you in your life and they love you for a reason. And if you can like tap into those reasons and like show them to the world, like people will love you. And if they don't, block them.
Yeah, right. Well, and so funny. So like one thing that I also love about, I'll say, being a fantasy book or just even a book content creator is what we are talking about, as important as it is to us and how much of an influence it has in our lives. It is not, for instance, like when there are less than nice comments, it's not usually about like our lives, so to speak, especially like I think about like the mom content creators that are out there, and you look at some of those content comments and it's like, oh my gosh, I would die. Like I could not I do not have tough enough skin to be attacked as a mother, so to speak, instead of my opinions about a fictional character. And so I also really like having a difference in like with my work and being a content creator. It's not for me necessarily about my life itself as much as I do like bring in my life into it, but it is about like a very specific thing, and my life and especially my kids do get to be more private, you know?
I kind of feel like I straddle both a little, right? Like I do post some bookish mom content. I don't even
definitely. But
I don't even know how I don't know if that's a thing, but I kind of made it.
I get it. No, it totally is. I totally vibe with it too. Yeah.
I was very adamant from the beginning. Like my kids will never, like I'll never share their names. Their faces will never be on, like they'll never be they're part of my story, but they're not part of my story on social media. Like people don't get to know them. And this is like my mama bear coming out, but I have 30 some odd thousand followers. Like I can't vet every person and know that my kids will be safe. And that to me, that's like such a personal choice. And I no shade to any mom influencer that likes to show their kids. Like it's a personal choice, but it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, I choose not to show my kids' faces because same thing. It's like for me, it's just a safety thing, and at the same time, it is like it's there's such a balance of bringing in that part of our lives because it is such a big part of our lives, and letting and not bringing them themselves, but just us as mothers into it. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's like I like to showcase like some of the struggles we have as moms. So like I try to do that on my page, but it was a really tough choice because there's a lot of times things will happen in my life that I'm like, oh, this is so cool, I should share it. And I'm like, you have to find the balance of like who really deserves access to certain like information or certain things. And it is tough when the bigger, like, I don't know, something about Bookstagram or just Instagram in general or content creators, maybe it's like the minute you start getting like a bigger following or likes, it's like that dopamine hit becomes like addicting and you just want to keep selling what you're selling. And I feel like I've become desensitized to that now. I will say that, like, I don't care how many views my stuff gets or likes anymore. Like it's
I'm
just
the same way,
exhausting.
because it's like I just know that it ebbs and flows. Like I don't know about you, I don't know if like how much you're on TikTok, but like our TikTok, it used to be our big thing, and Instagram, we were really struggling with gaining any traction. And then like about 6 months in, there was like this huge switch. And then all of a sudden our Instagram started getting a lot more engagement. And I personally love Instagram more because it has much more of a community aspect to it.
Absolutely.
That I think that it's just set up that way with the features that are in it. While TikTok is a little bit more like you see it and then move on with your life. Like that's just like the For You page and how that all works. And so like our TikTok, oh my gosh, like the views and the engagement, like it has been so low recently for us. And it's like our Instagram following has been catching up with TikTok. And at first we were like, oh my gosh, like what do we do? It's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like it like for us at least, like it like it'll all even itself out. It all just ebbs and flows. And we just got to keep focusing on what we're doing and what's working and just do our thing. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. I feel like it's more about like like you made an important like observation. Instagram is much more about community. And I actually run a Discord with like a monthly book club, all people that have come from Instagram. And I don't even know how many people are in it now, but they're the people I go to when like there's like little support for mom thread. And like we're in there every day, just like saying things. And it's just like such a beautiful thing that I don't know any other area of the internet this would have like been possible.
Right? Exactly. And there's just like, I love like the bookish community. I think that's my favorite part of just kind of like really coming into this world is there, like we all want that sense of community, especially as we are reading these books that for quite a few of us, not a lot of people in our real friends, family and whatnot are reading them, but it's like, we want to talk about them. And so then that's where we find this community online. And that's been one of the biggest honors that Nicole and I have been able to do is to grow this community and to help people like make friends and whatnot, and to feel confident to start their own bookstagrams and all of that. And it's so funny too, because then there's also like the book community side where people are like, no, like that's wrong. Like there is definitely like there's always going to be some toxic side. There is, especially like Team Nesta, and it's like, you know that the comments are going to be crazy, right?
Yeah, we can talk about that though, because honestly, Nesta, I saw this quote, and I'll get like maybe smeared for not remembering where it's from, but if you have experienced like similar things to Nesta, right?
Yeah,
you can identify with her, you like her. But if you've had to deal with a Nesta in your life, she's really hard for you to like identify with. You're not going to like her. And
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
No, I just feel like that hits a nail on the head, right? Like if you've really struggled with mental health and like you can really identify with their journey, you find a lot of, I don't know, you really like her story.
That's like so much for me too, because like for instance on the deep dive, we're going to be going into Silver Flames within the next month, and I'm personally really excited to cover that because her, first of all, just the writing, the character development, I think that her character development, but spoilers by the way for everybody, I don't know
okay.
Sorry.
Spoilers for Silver everyone Flames. Has read ACOTAR. Like,
I know, right? Like, oh my gosh, with our early Fourth Wing coverage, like we just kind of assumed that everybody had read ACOTAR and gave some spoilers away, and to this day I still feel really bad. But anyway, but like I think that it is the best character development that I've ever read and ever gone on that journey with. And I understand and I can appreciate how some people are not Nesta fans. Like they read it and they're like, I'm sorry, like I don't get it. And there's, again, never any wrong answer. It is always up to our interpretation. And I think that there is also a difference between just not liking her character and still having an appreciation from where she started and where she went and that character development that happens. And for me, like it's so funny because it's like, I probably would not actually get along with her, but I love her so much. And I'm also just like the biggest Cassian, like he is my number one book boyfriend, and I
Me
can talk about
too.
him all day long. Right. And,
yes.
and so like being able to just go on that journey, for me, it's really special. And I want to be able to share that with people. And it's not like trying to, I'll say like even like shove down their throats, like you got to like Nesta. It's not about that, but it's just a appreciation for her character. And I love her so much. Yeah. For that, most of all for that reason and how far she goes.
Well, and did you read Crescent City?
Yes, I have.
Okay. This is spoilers for the third book. You don't want to hear them. Just like for 30 seconds. I really hated though how Azriel and Nesta were portrayed in Crescent City 3. I don't feel like it lined up with Silver Flames. And
you know, it's so funny because it's some people have actually said that they liked Nesta more in House of Flame and Shadow than they did in Silver Flames.
I could see that.
I could see that too.
Yes.
And there was like, first of all, it's also like, I just have never really seen Nesta and Azriel interact in that way, you know, beyond like the training ring, right?
They were like thick as thieves. And I'm like, where did that happen? Like, I just was a little confused. Yeah.
Like there was a lot of off-page development with that too. Yeah.
And, you know, maybe we'll get more information in the next ACOTAR book. That's so good. I keep holding out hope that we're going to get an announcement. Like, oh my, it'd be lovely.
So SJM's website was like, first had scheduled maintenance the other day. And I was absolutely freaking out. Cause also it's like
selling
a running joke.
Like,
right? Yes. It's a running joke that whenever Nicole is out of town, some kind of big news happens. Like, especially last year in the lead up to Iron Flame, every single time that she was out of town, there would be some kind of big announcement, like a big teaser would drop or something. And so I've been like, okay, she just came back from her 2-week honeymoon. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a big announcement while she's gone. Nothing ended up happening, unfortunately, but maybe, especially like we're waiting to figure out our 2025 schedule, like, cause we plan out our deep dives like well in advance.
You probably have to, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah. And like, we don't know what we're going to, like, we're trying to hold out for 2025 schedule after Onyx Storm, because it's like, when is ACOTAR 6 going to come out? Because of course we're going to cover that, but we also don't want to stop a different series like right in the middle. So we're just like, we're kind of reliant on that announcement. And at this point it's like, is it coming? Like, is it just coming at all?
Was it in January that she teased it?
Yes, with her post about
with her, like, the backpack in the woods.
Yes, that was back in January. So
I can't believe it's been that long.
I know, and I really thought that we were going to get a spring release for spring 2025 release, and at this point, I don't think that's happening.
I don't feel like she has a huge presence on social media, and so I like sometimes wish she was on here more, because I feel like other authors are very transparent about their process and where they're at. And I just don't feel like we get that sometimes from SJM. Like, she's very, until she has an announcement, I feel like we don't hear too much. And while I will say like a newer SJM fan, I do understand that she used to be very active and then I think that just everything got a little bit crazy, and, you know, like with just how big she is now. But then I think that a great person who is like very active on social media, who keeps people informed, is Rebecca Yarros, who still has that big fame. Of course, nobody has it to the extent of SJM, but it is like, oh, you know, like she just loves to Taylor Swift all of us, right? With like all of her Easter eggs and everything. And she knows it. She always has that like little gleam in her eye when she's doing it. Like, she enjoys torturing us a little bit. Like I still remember she was at like, was it the book release? It might have been for Iron Flame, and sorry, spoilers for the series, but when she made like that line about Dane's belt buckle.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, I still remember her releasing that reel, and I'm like, what is she doing?
Yes.
Like, that was right in my mind. Like, her little face.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But like, I do love her personality. I actually did not hate Iron Flame. Sorry, spoilers.
I definitely didn't either. I can understand.
It's a good second book.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I do understand, definitely. And I'll also say, like, when Nicole and I were going into it, of course, like we we were on a deadline with like getting content out and stuff like that. So like we were staying up all night, like we were reading it like crazy. And we also did have the lens of, we know we're about to deep dive this book. Nicole and I are very mindful of speaking positively about books and those authors. We don't like to bash anything. Of course, like there are like issues with books and things like that we will discuss.
Absolutely. But I think you can have like an issue with a character, but not crap on a book as a whole.
Exactly. So and especially with the platform that we have, like we really do want to always enforce a positive community and positive environment, and that starts with us. But so with Iron Flame, like I was genuinely surprised, like as people were finishing reading it and like not liking it. And I do understand that the biggest issue was the miscommunication trope. Like I was reading, I was like, okay, like this is, and at this, like I get it. And at the same time, that's how I was when I was 20 years old. Yeah.
I mean,
and
it fits for their age.
Yes.
Like I hate to say that, but developmentally it makes sense. Like their prefrontal cortexes aren't even fully formed yet. Like they're not making good decisions.
And within the context of the story, with how Violet's world just got turned upside down, like it all, and like that's my biggest thing with books is like, as long as things that I might not like or agree with make sense for the character, for the plot, for the story, then I'm fully on, like sign me up. Like I'm not going to dock the book for that reason. Like it's, in fact, if anything, it makes it more complex and developed because I like that there's something that I don't like, if that makes sense, right? Like as long as it has a good reason behind it.
Well, and just because a book evokes like a strong reaction that's not positive at the end, like you can be very upset with the book, but it doesn't mean the book was bad. I think its intended purpose was to get you frustrated, upset, not know what the rest of the series has in store, so you want to keep reading.
Exactly. And it's like I have a million questions about, Jack fucking Barlow, and it's like,
like why was he the one that needed to come back? Like I'm sorry.
Like, and I'm also like just having to trust that we will find out, because she has teased that we will learn more of that. Like he's not going to be a main character, he's going to be definitely more in the background, but the whole plot around him will be coming to the surface. And so it's like, okay, great. Like I can trust that. I will absolutely trust that. And like you said, it's a great second book.
But that's
and
also
I just love all the dragon
stuff.
Like I love the world building. I love all of it, like with my whole heart.
Well, and that's a great example of like hating what an author did with the character, not loving it, but not hating the book, right? Like
exactly.
You can hate Jack fucking Barlow. He's the worst, like I can't even talk about it. I don't know. I didn't really get it. Like,
I don't know if you listened to our Fourth Wing coverage, but like, so back at Fourth Wing, when we were getting we would get so many great emails and DMs and all of that with theories. And one of the big ones was, I don't think Jack is actually dead. I think he's actually a Venom.
And you're like, absolutely not.
I went on a 10-minute rant on the podcast about how he is dead. He is absolutely dead. And I went boom, boom, boom. Here are all the reasons. It was a whole thing. And then I read Iron Flame and it is like, oh my God, I can't show my face on the internet again. And still, like every week we get multiple messages of people being like, ha, I just listened to your Fourth Wing episode. It's like, yep, call it just egg on my face. Yep. I mean, I'll never live it down.
I just like, I also think though, I don't get enraged that bad by books. Like I can like not love a book, but I also probably don't hate it. Like it takes a lot for me to be like, that book was horrible. Like
yes,
I truly am entertained like 99% of the time.
Me too. Like I kind of have like two different I'll say rating systems, where one is my vibes rating, and then the other one is my story development rating. And the story development is like, okay, like I don't know if you've read this, I won't give any spoilers, but like Quicksilver,
I just read it. Me and Aaron actually talked about it. It's coming out today, the episode. Yes.
So
sorry, got really excited.
So like that was like full 5 stars, all 5 stars for vibes. And then like the last, again, I won't give spoilers here for anyone listening, but it's the last 10% definitely docked a 0.5 for the stars, because I was like, what the heck is going, like I did not comprehend it. And and so it's like, okay, so for the story development it got a 4.5 because there was some things that it's like, okay, but it's also a first book, of course I'm gonna read the sequel, I'm gonna see what happens, because oh my gosh, for the vibes.
So I'm gonna be vague as possible. but the random triumvirate at the end. I have logistical questions.
Oh, I have so many questions.
Logistical questions.
I also am such a, like, I love Kingfish. You know what? Whatever. Is minor spoilers, no plot spoilers here.
I won't say anything crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Kingfisher, I absolutely loved when he was being an asshole. Like, I know that some people have a lot of issues,
but like also like he was hilarious.
Right? Like, oh my gosh, his one-liners were just like, kind of, for me, it was like, finally we get an MMC who is actually a dick.
Literally, he was an MMC I loathed until I didn't.
And then it was like all of a sudden this big switch, and it's like, wait, where did the other Kingfisher go?
Yes. I mean, he's like the unhealthy guy in high school that was really hot, that was kind of a huge dick, and you're like, I would, you know, you're attracted to him, but you're like, I shouldn't be. No wonder I'm
attracted to that. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I dated.
I'm sure before I met my husband, I made some unhealthy choices. Very similar. Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm like, I should not love him as much as I do, but I do. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah, like but like other, again, like just kind of going through other great books, because I just love talking about books with you. Like Spark of the Everflame. Have you read that series?
I saw Jess just started it. And now, so I'll be honest, I have been struggling to read. Like, I read Quicksilver last month. Like, that was it. And usually I read like 6 books a month. I need to start that next. So I'm actually reading Apprentice to the Villain, because I just wanted a quick...
I just finished that too, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted a quick fun read. So I'm reading that, but then I actually want to start Spark, I think, next.
It's really good. So I will say, Kindred's Curse series has my favorite world ever, like full stop. And that is a huge thing for me to say. The magic system, the realms, how the political structure is, like between the mortals and the, and I'll just call them Fae, even though that's not what they call them in the book. It is my absolute favorite. And Penn Cole, like, there are just Easter eggs everywhere. And I will say, however, like when we were talking, for instance, about like characters who do things that frustrate us, the main female character in that book, in that series, she does a lot of things that are very frustrating that a lot of people then don't like the book series. But for me, I will always defend it, because yes, she might be doing frustrating things, but oh my goodness, it makes so much sense for her character and for
like
who she is.
Frustrating, or like
more just like really good person at her core, and there are some people who need to die, and she won't let them die, kind of like, without spoilers there. Yeah,
I need to read this.
And there is a Dane guy, and there is a version of Dane in the book series. But again, like, it's all like, for me, I guess I'm able to compartmentalize not liking what a character is doing, and not docking the book on that, for instance. But oh my gosh, the book, like, I just absolutely love that world more than anything, I think.
Did you read One Dark Window?
Yes, that duology. That's another one of my favorites. So unique. Oh my goodness.
So good. I love the magic system. It was so, like, if you're looking for like a gothic fall fantasy quick read, this duology was chef's kiss. Is it the Shepherd King duology, I believe?
Shepherd King. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So while we were talking about fall, I've actually been starting to put together a list, because I really want to start reading more like spooky. I'm not usually actually a huge Halloween person. I know, like, don't come at me, but I'm really wanting to get more into it. Like, I love fall. Like, I guess I'm a basic bitch kind of thing.
Aren't we all though at our core? Like,
I know, right?
Especially like, once you get into your 30s, like, you're like, I'm literally wearing like a shirt with a ghost and a oversized
sweatshirt. Sign me up. Yes, that's what you're wearing right now. I love it.
You just described me.
But what are some other great like fall books that you would recommend? I'm right now reading Heartless Hunter. That is, do you so like YA? Good.
Like, do you need spice?
I don't need spice. No.
Okay, I loved Belladonna. Like, that series. I think Wisteria just came out. It got the gothic spooky vibes.
Okay,
I loved that. I'm trying to think of what else.
Is that fantasy, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm trying to think. I haven't
read Serpent
in the Wings of Night.
Yes, I haven't read that one yet, but I do understand, like, it's got like the vampire sort of thing to it. So
I really loved the first book. The second book I thought was really good too, but the first book I loved. Like,
okay,
even if you don't want to like read a whole series, like the first book I thought was really great. I'm trying to think of what else I've read. I feel like my brain is not firing on all cylinders.
You're good. I've been like, like we were kind of talking about this earlier, but like I'll say especially with the platform that we have, I am so self-conscious that I haven't read all the books. Like for instance,
Yes.
we just put out, we're doing a partnership with Audible right now. And so we're doing some social campaigns with them. And the fact that I haven't read like all of the audio books out there in the world, like I'm all of a sudden like, I put so much pressure on myself. Nicole and I are very much perfectionists, but like I'm trying
to my core, like
right?
it keeps me up at
so
night.
Like I'm trying to read more so that I can give more book recommendations and I can have more, like, it's like I can talk to you about the ins and outs of the Empyrean series and the ACOTAR series, because like that's what like we live in for the podcast. But after so many months of covering the same series, like it's kind of like, okay, like I need to go out and, you know, touch other books kind of thing. And, like not touch grass, but, you know, the equivalent for book reading.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's just like, after this podcast, I guarantee I'll think of like 20 different books that would be wonderful, but
send them over.
Truthfully, I think I read almost 60 books last year. I think I've read like 30 or 40 this year. And I almost compare them to TV shows. Like, unless it's really great, it's just like in, out, like,
yeah.
So don't feel guilty. I just think the comparison trap, I think in any area of your life, not even just social media, but just even as like a mom, I struggle with that so much. I struggle with my whole life, like just wanting to feel like I'm worthy, I'm doing a good job. Like, give me that gold star, please.
Yep.
And then I realized like Bookstagram and like even just reading in general, like if I'm doing that, then like I've lost the plot, you know?
But yeah, like I think that like I love reading. I just like love reading to enjoy. And I do realize that especially for reading for work, like it is so wonderful. And I'm so lucky that I get to do that. And there is this like pressure where it's like, oh my gosh, like I have to just read. And it's like, even like my sense of self-care, I love to take a bath. Like it's not very often that I get to take a bath, but when I do, I get really excited. But I also get really excited because then I also get to read and I'm like, haha, it's like I'm working, but I'm in the bathtub. And it's like, okay, that is not a healthy mindset, even if it is true.
Well, and I feel like before Bookstagram, I could like crank out 8 books in a month and it was like no pressure. But I do think the minute you start trying, I don't know if you're like this. This is me.
Yeah.
The minute I like start feeling like pressure to read, I almost don't want to. There's like some sort of like secret like pushback where I'm like, I don't want you to tell me what to do. And you know, no one's telling me. Like I get like stubborn about it. And so I actually had to find like a mental, like I had to remove like a mental block around reading a while ago because I was like feeling this pressure. I'm like, whoa. Like, yeah, this is all for fun. Like
exactly. Like we're all just here for a good time and it's okay. Yes. Especially like too with like I can get really nervous when I share my feelings about a book because if people don't agree with me, it's like I feel like I'm wrong. And it's like, okay, I have to remind myself and the community sometimes too, where it's like we are all allowed to have our own opinions. Like I'll take like there was this one book that we read for book club a few months ago that I personally was not very crazy about. And some people absolutely loved it. And it's like, yeah, there were lots of vampires and werewolves.
What
and
book was
there
it, by the way?
Bride.
Okay. I can see like it's a very divisive book. Like, I don't feel like you're either going to love it or it's not for you.
Yeah. And it's like, it was like great writing. Like it was nothing against the book, but for me, it's like, like I'm not its target audience and that is okay. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think I really enjoyed it, but not like I enjoy a fantasy novel. It's how I would enjoy a rom-com. That's what it felt like to me.
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, similar. So I feel like there's people with like assistant and apprentice to the villain. I feel like some people will go into it and be like, not like it because they were expecting something completely different than its intended purpose. Like I've always tried to describe it as like a fantasy office, like The Office. Yeah. And
for me, so sorry to interrupt you. So we had an interview. We interviewed Hannah, and we all agreed that it is literally like The Office meets Princess Bride meets Shrek, and it's like somehow it works, but you have to go in with that understanding for that book, or you will be disappointed and be like, "What the heck am I reading?"
But it's like almost like a comfort read to me. So like I was feeling like there's just a lot of stuff going on in my life. Everything's feeling really heavy. It's like the perfect light book, even though there's a lot of gruesome things happening.
Right. It's like they were dead. Like, yeah, exactly. But it's all in such a funny way.
And so sometimes I think it's like, for me, like going back to like, not like you can not like a book, but respect its intended purpose. So I think Allie Hazelwood, she's like primarily has only written like contemporary romance, like Love Theoretically. And this was like her first like dip into fantasy. And I felt like it was very much written in like a rom-com vibe.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially with the younger sibling in there too. And it's like, see, like I didn't have that perspective, but if I reread it with more of that, I think that there is so much to, especially with Bookstagram and just the book community, where we do get certain expectations for books as we go into them. And then that can really change the book, whether it is oh my gosh, like a lot of hype around the book. And it's like, I know that this is going to be the next best book I've ever read. And then it might not meet your expectations. And it's like,
which happened with Crescent City 3. Like,
yes. Oh my gosh, that is a perfect example.
Yes.
And like, for instance, I also worry, like, I think there was a little bit of that with Iron Flame too, for people who didn't like it.
Yes.
And I think we'll really get that same thing with like Onyx Storm, or ACOTAR 6, any of these big hype books where there has been time to theorize and think about every little possible detail. And then if it doesn't go according to what we consider the plan, then it's like, well, then it's not good. And I don't think that's a healthy mindset at all for any of us. And I realize that Nicole and I, especially being, I'll say some of the spearheaders of the theories and all of that kind of stuff, it is like having to check ourselves and be like, okay, this is all just in fun though. Like, we're just having fun. And then whatever does end up happening, it's respecting that is how it actually is. Now, I think Crescent City is a little bit different because there was
the Iron Man spacesuit thing, I will get me every time.
I realize I don't even know how to talk about that book. It gets, you know what? And it's so funny because, like, for instance, like that book, when we were talking about like the vibes and the story development, I'd almost usually I give vibes higher points than the story development. But I think in that one, I might even give the story development more than vibes because I was not vibing so much with it.
You know, and I think she's tried some things stylistically that were different than her other books, like the mid point of view, but not point of view jumps. Like, it'll just be a different paragraph. And it was like, whoa, okay, we're switching.
Yeah.
I think some things were just like different and unexpected that I think threw people off. But overall, I feel like I was very medium about the book. Like, I read it. I didn't hate it. Was it like everything people hyped it up to be? No, but I also felt like that wasn't fair. There was like almost too much time for people to theorize and make it bigger than it was going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is something, like, you know, like, as many positives as there are about social media in general, that is I'd say probably the biggest con, as big books are hyped up and stuff like that. So
I think so too. And part of me just wishes like people would remember that like authors are humans, like just trying to do their best, and like let's take it down a notch. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Or like for instance, with Burn of the Everflame, so the fourth and final installment, it was supposed to come out in July, and then like the date kept getting pushed back. And she is an indie author, like she is doing all this on her own. Like, she does have, you know, like a team, but it's not like a publishing company. And so she eventually had to pull Burn because it just kept getting pushed back, and she doesn't want to say a date until she knows that it is the absolute right date. And she got so much hate for it because people were really angry that the book wasn't coming out when it was supposed to. And Nicole and I like really stepped up. Like, it was like, we ride at dawn kind of thing for her. And it really is like, and especially like going back to, if a book might be like 3 stars for me, I feel bad even sharing that because I don't want people to see what I see about a book. And it's like, oh, I'm not going to read that. Cause it's like, no, like, you might really love that book. Like, it's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that's like the hardest part too, is like people, you don't realize how much weight your opinion has until like you put it out there, and then people like, well, just take that as like the truth. But really it's like, we come with our own experiences and likes and dislikes and triggers. Right. Yep. And how we internalize the story is so different. But yeah, Like there's some books I'm like, I'm just not gonna even talk about this on my social media. Like I don't like it.
Exactly.
That's where the
And the same thing
piece
goes with characters too. With our like we were talking about with Nesta earlier.
Yes.
So many of us have very passionate opinions about characters, and it can really create some division because other people, like I think Tamlin is another great example where some people
don't hate Tamlin.
See,
but some people do,
and there's like all these different opinions around certain characters, and it's also like it all always depends on our own interpretation. Like there's never a right or wrong. So
no, I think that's like a really good message, because I think sometimes we get hung up on the fact that like if someone doesn't agree with us, like it either makes us wrong or them wrong, and really it's like we're reading a book and there's a lot of different interpretations to like how. Yeah.
And the same thing goes with like theories too, where it's like we are all like literally we are all just throwing spaghetti at the wall at the end of the day. Like there is no right or wrong theory. And as I learned with Jack Barlow, because that was like I very, very rarely am like Nicole and I are big on like not theory shaming. Like we do not like doing that. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the most theory shaming I did, because it was like, no, you all, this is wrong. And then lo and behold, it happened. And I'm like, all right, I learned my lesson. I will never, ever do that again.
I honestly feel like that's like a perfect way to describe like our entire experience doing this is like, we're all just throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping something sticks, right? Like that is it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up this entire conversation. We're just all throwing spaghetti at a wall.
And it's just like, and the point of it too is just having fun and being messy. And when it sticks, it's like, ooh, let's do that again kind of thing. So.
And then if you redo it the same way, it probably won't work. So
exactly.
Super fun for us. Well, and Lexi, honestly, thank you so much for coming on here and just chatting about like motherhood and honestly books for the last like half hour. It was like so much fun. I just adore you. I think you're doing amazing things, and I honestly look up to you so much. So just thanks for being on here and just chatting with me on a Sunday. It was really nice and much needed.
This was so much fun. I just like love just sitting and chatting with you, and especially like we're just like, again, like we're in like the same phase and just like getting to talk about all the different things. Like I am sure that you and I could keep on talking here for hours and hours.
Literally.
And I know for me, my kids are probably going to wake up from their nap here soon.
Yep. I know the feeling. I'm like, how much time do I got for my husband's calling me? Yes. We'll definitely have to do this again. Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the things. I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.